We'll just start with Newegg because it happens to be the first tab that I currently have up here. So remember, if you have any questions, please be sure to put that in the chat. But with Newegg, okay, so the 7600X still reigns, well, okay, the 5600 or 5700X, wherever it went to, the Ryzen 7 5000 series 5700X. This guy still reigns supreme as being one of the best deals that I've ever seen. 7600X with $30 off promo isn't bad either. Let me see if it comes with free memory. It does not. Oh yeah, it does. So it comes with a 1 terabyte NVMe solid state drive, and that's an $89.99 value. So, I mean, it's not, okay, let's first say that for right now. It's not a $90 value. It's more like a $70 value at this point in time. So, but of course it is the 7600X, so it is that. So please bear that in mind. So it is the newest generation, which is DDR5, and it does give you a 1 terabyte NVMe, which isn't much to talk about. It's not as good as getting 32 gigs of DDR4. So that's the reason why this guy isn't in my #1 slot, but it is in the top 2. So it would probably be my second one when it comes to processors. It's really a good deal for 7600X. But remember, if you do go with 7600X as opposed to the 5700X, now you're talking about DDR5 versus DDR4, which is more expensive memory. Plus, you can't go 4 sticks. If you go 4 sticks, it'll be a problem on DDR5. Whereas if you go DDR4, you can still go 4 sticks. But of course, the RAM speed is slower than DDR5. So please bear that in mind. But overall, I think this is a pretty good deal. $35 off, so you're looking at what, $190, somewhere in that area. What is it doing? Oh, it's doing this. I'm sorry. So I was just like, is it tripping? Because I was seeing it in the tablet and it was throwing me off. But yeah, so we're talking about $190, still pretty good deal. And then, you talk about $70 off with the NVMe if you have plans on buying a 1 terabyte NVMe. So then we're looking at about $120. Not as good as $80, but still a really good deal. Especially, if you're trying to get on the AM or the AM5 platform with DDR5, then definitely I would suggest the 7600X. Let's see here. We talked about processors. We didn't do power supplies, but I don't want to kind of jump around. So we'll do motherboards here. So when it comes to motherboards, let's see. I didn't really give motherboards much leniency. I didn't give it much credit at all because motherboards is kind of a motherboard thing. It really just kind of depends on what you're looking for. And then you get whatever deal is available. Like there isn't anything here that I've looked at when it comes to motherboards that just was like, oh my God, this is the craziest deal ever. So if we look at motherboards here, I mean, some of these M series AM5 motherboards seem to be okay. Excuse me, 25% off is okay deal. $100 is kind of where I look to. It's kind of like when I'm looking for a mid-tier motherboard for like, let's say just a mid-tier gaming build or a girlfriend build or something along those lines. And it doesn't need to be anything fancy like having multiple NVMe slots, mostly because I run multiple NVMEs for RAID, or if we're talking about editing or streaming, then I don't particularly go for those higher ends. I said I go for like a mid-grade, and $100 to $120 is kind of my sweet spot. So we'll use that as our testing ground. So $119 for this guy here. Let's see how many NVMe slots it has. And then also, let me see if there's anything else that looks pretty good here. AM4, because we have been talking about AM4, so we'll go ahead and grab a couple AM4s. That looks even better. And let me see what else we got here. This one is okay, but I already got 2 AM4s, so I'll leave it alone. And then let me get one more AM5 if I can find one. This is also a DDR4 with the $10 off. Okay, fine, I'll look at you too. And then AM5. Let's see here. Now, I'll go ahead and grab an Intel because, well, okay, the reason why I wasn't grabbing an Intel because on the processor section, I only mentioned AMD processors. Intel has some pretty good deals too, but they never typically be as good as some of the AMD deals. Like, you paying, $119, 30% off. Generally, Intel is not that forthcoming with price discounts. But this one here, 20%, 28% off. Let's see what makes it so special. And of course, this is DDR5, so that'll work. So we'll look at some of these guys here. So B650M motherboard. Okay, you have one PCIe slot, you have an NVMe on the front, and then you have a PCIe X4 slot. 4 DDR4 slots, or yeah, this is DDR4, right? Yeah, four slots for memory. This is a MATX, so you're going to get 4 slots. I don't see anything particularly standoutish about it. Let's see here. Yeah, it's nothing special. 4 USB 3 ports, a USB-C 3.2 Type 1 Gen C, or USB-C Gen 1. So that means it's USB 3.2 Gen 1, 10 gigabits per second. And then we are looking at It supports, I mean, obviously it supports Ryzen processors, but this is going to be an AM5 board. So that is a good one. So it's rare that we can get a DDR5 at 120. That's pretty, it's pretty okay, I guess is the best way to say it. It's not something that I'll like jump up and down and joy for, but if you are on the AM5 platform with an LGA 1718, LGA 1780, why did I say LGA? That's weird. But AMD B650 for the Ryzen series. I just want to make sure because it said B650 is generally a Ryzen series platform, but it said LGA, which threw me off. But yeah, this is going to be an AMD motherboard and DDR5 at that. So I would say something along these lines will be pretty good. It only has one NVMe slot, so please bear that in mind. Let me see, let me make sure that it doesn't have one on the back. Oh, no, I'm sorry, it has two. It has one M.2 integrated in the chipset supporting socket 3. Oh no, it says one M.2 connector. M2, okay, one CPU and one on the back here for the chipset. What's up, King Bryant? How's it going? And let me see, if we look on the back, does it show another NVMe slot? It didn't say it specifically, but I mean, when we look at the specs, it does say that it has two M.2. So I'm gonna go on the offensive and say that it has two M.2 slots, one in the front and one in the back. Which is, if that's the case, then this is a really good deal because you want to get as many M.2 slots as possible. Be sure that whenever you are doing M.2 slots, there is one with a heatsink, but if you're going to do two, make sure you have that one in the back populated before you put it in your mother or in your chassis or in your case, because if not, then you won't be able to access it. So please bear that in mind. But overall, this is a pretty good deal, especially, you know, $40 off, which, you know, motherboards kind of go like that in prices. So it's not anything to write home about, but it's still a pretty good deal. Let's see, next up here, this is the same thing. Next up here, Micro ATX AM4. So this is an AM4 with a PCIe Gen 4 X16 slot. Make sure. Yeah, and then we have a second PCIe slot, which is pretty good. And this is still Micro ATX. It's rare to get a Micro ATX with two PCIe slots, so please bear that in mind. Like, the reason why you would want to do something like this is if you want a streaming card on the other, like an Elgato MK2 or some of the HD 4-port capture cards if you have multiple devices like Switch, PS4, blah, 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 or PS5 that you want to have going into your computer. That's why you would use that last slot. Now, it is a lot of room or a good amount of room. The reason why you want to know this is because some of the 40 series cards are 2.5, 3.5 slot cards, and they can take up all that space. So this does give you a good amount of room that you can run a pretty decent beefy size graphics card and still use that bottom slot. That bottom slot can be, well, okay, it does show PCIe 3 X16, so you can't go like a NVMe slot with it, but I would recommend if you are going to use that, use it for like an Elgato or just any type of brand capture card for your PlayStation or your Xbox or your Switch or whatever you have plans on streaming, tablet, whatever, that you can use that slot for your game capture. That's what I would do with that particular slot. And make sure that if you are going to do that, make sure it's low profile so it doesn't get in the way of the fans of the graphics card. But overall, this is a pretty good deal too, especially when the fact that it gives you two slots. Now, of course, because of the price point, more than likely it's not going to have more than one NVMe slot. And I just want to verify and make sure before I say that. One PCIe Gen 4 X16, 3X16, and 3X1, which will never populate. It won't get a chance to be populated because the graphics card will cover it. But if we go down here, let me just go to, oh my goodness, where is what happened? Did it just not show it? I guess it's just showing this instead. Where are the details? Oh, here it is, specs. Sorry about that. So if we go to the specs on this guy here, we see one M.2. So yeah, we're not going crazy. So it's going to have one M.2. It's not going to have much more than that. So the 3X16 supports NVMe SSD as boot disk. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Don't waste that 3X slot 16 on SSDs, NVMe SSDs at that, because we're only talking about 6 gigabits per second. Just plug it into the SATA port at that point. So it's just not worth it at this. So like you wouldn't want to put an SSD right there. I would suggest just putting it anywhere on the case and then plugging it into these SATA ports over here in the front. 6 gigabits per second is 6 gigabits per second. I don't care where it's coming from. So if it says NVMe SSD, then I'm thinking 6 gigabits per second, in which case I would just plug it into the front. So don't use that for an SSD slot. Instead, use it for a capture card. Alrighty, if we go to the next one here. So this is a Aorus Elite for $89.99. I do love the Elite boards because they have a lot of nice stuff going with it. This is also another Micro ATX. So a lot of small form factor builds today. That's gonna be great because I love building small form factor. That's my favorite. I literally don't do any other build but that. So this is gonna be really nice. You got a USB 3.2 We also had the white one is the BIOS, so they use that to actually flash the BIOS as well as having USB 3.2 ports. So that's going to be really good. You have multiple ports here at 2, 4, and then you have a couple USB 2, 3 gigabits per second ports, which isn't anything to write home about. But the fact that it gives you quite a bit of ports makes me happy. So, you know, you have your 5 gigabits per second ports here, and then you have a couple of 10 gigabits per second ports over there as well. And let's see here. Okay, same thing with the other one here. You have two M.2 NVMe drive, or two M.2 NVMe slots, one on the front, one on the back, is what this guy looks like here. So overall, really good board. I am very interested in this guy. Now, this one here is a little different because it doesn't have a heatsink going over the actual NVMe. Please bear that in mind. So you're gonna need a little bit more cooling going over the top of this guy. Not anything to write home about, but something to take note of. Because I mean, we're already talking about micro ATX. So if we're talking about micro ATX, you're gonna put in a small form factor case or a smaller case than what you normally would. In which case, I would say make sure you have a little bit of fan air going across the top of it just to cool off the NVMe. Alrighty, let's go ahead and go to the last one here in the motherboarding guide. Well, no, I guess we got one more. So this is a gigabyte Wi-Fi DDR4 LGA 1700 B760 MATX. That is a lot to talk about that no one cares about. So we'll just go ahead and skip to the details. So this is going to be an Intel-based micro ATX motherboard. I just wanted to make sure. I was actually looking at it and seeing it at the same time. They have the same box, so it always throws you off. Now, you do get two PCIe X4 slots, which is okay. Most gaming cards actually don't utilize the entire PCIe 3x16 bandwidth, like the entire size of it. It actually just utilizes the X4 slot. So please bear in mind, you could still use a capture card on this guy as well, and you just put it on the bottom slot and just populate it that way. Now, some of these older boards like to take some of the bandwidth away from the main GPU whenever you do something like this, but it should still be fine because we're already talking about AM4, so it should be okay. And then it has a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type-C front port, which is this guy right here. If you can see where my cursor is, it's gonna, well, I guess you can't because of, well, yeah, you can. So that guy right where the plus is. So, and then it has, let me flip over to the back here. There we go. This isn't great. 3 USB 3 ports at 5 gigabits per second, and then it has 2 USB 2 ports at 3 gigabits per second, and then it has Wi-Fi. I mean, it's nothing to write home about. It's not as good as some of the other ones, but it's $99, so what can you say? With a $10 off promo, so it's nothing to write home about. It's just a decent motherboard. This one's great though. So this one is going to be DDR5, so we're back to DDR5 here, and this is going to be Intel-based Z790 motherboard. So this one has a heatsink. Well, it has a slot for the NVMe, so I'm guessing it has some thermal paste or thermal compound or some kind of sticky tape that you can put onto it to try to get rid of some of that heat dissipation. It is a full-size ATX motherboard, so you have a lot going on here. You have multiple PCIe slots, and you have multiple NVMe slots, it looks like. It looks like you have 2 on the front, but maybe more than 2. Is that 3? Yeah, it looks like you have, ooh, this is really good. This has 3 NVMe slots, and let me make sure. Yeah, M.2. 4 M.2 slots. That is crazy good. Crazy good. I'll populate all of them because I'm crazy like that, but I've only seen this in some of the higher end ones. So yeah, this is actually really good. So yeah, I'm a fan of this one, but this isn't really for most people because most people aren't going to populate that many NVMe slots. The only time you would need something like that is if you're an editor. And if you're an editor, then yeah, by all means, for sure. USB-C on the back, you have 2 USB 3s, you have some USB 2 ports, 3 gigabits per second, and then you have a USB 3 port with charging, 10 gigabits per second, as well as a 10 gigabit per second USB-C port. So nice, very nice. Supports 12th and 13th gen Intel Core processor. Please bear in mind, this isn't the newest. I think the newest is 14th generation, but you know, Intel is Intel. Every version is only a 10% increase, so you're not exactly, you know, dying here. So it's Intel. Like, let's not get too crazy. It's going to be like an 8% to 10% performance bump, if that. Alrighty, so that's going to be the motherboards. I think I've covered that motherboard and CPU topic extensively, so we can go ahead and move on. Alrighty, so 15-1 Hada 03, what's up? Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and move on from the motherboards, and we're going to move to, let's see, memory. I'll do memory. Why not? So memory is memory. No one cares. Let me just find something that's decent. I mean, they're all going to be pretty decent. $10 off for 32 gigs of DDR5 is good at DDR5 6000. That's probably going to be one of your best deals. It's very popular and is probably going to be a pretty good deal in general. DDR5 6000, 32 gigs, and this one's shiny. So I would probably go with this one here because it has colorful, But that's the only thing that I would say about it. You know, if we're talking about just overall efficiency, this probably is a little bit better because this is, well, I take that back. Why is it? This is, oh, it's 64. Okay, okay. I was like, why is it so expensive? 60, okay. And then the DDR4, this is probably going to be one of your better deals. So this is DDR4 3200, which is, you know, pretty good RAM for DDR4. And the 32 gigs at 47.99 with $5 off, so $42, $43. This is an excellent deal for DDR4 memory. So I would say this guy here for DDR4, the Crucial Pro, 32 gigs, and then for the DDR5, I would say the shiny one, the $90 one. It comes with McAfee Security VPN with purchase. No one knows what that is, and I'm not about to sit here and explain VPN to anyone. It takes too long. Well, it's not really too long. VPN is basically if you want to create a tunnel between you and someone else that's secure. That's what a VPN is. And it could be you to a job, it could be you to another person, it can be anything. But that's what VPN is. But I mean, if you want that, you can get that. But that's not the reason why I'm saying this is better. This is better because it has colors and that's it. There is no other reason. They're the same RAM. So we'll leave that at that and go ahead and move on away from memory. Okay, GPUs. Let's go ahead and take a look at the graphics card. Someone had asked me about, you know, if the 7800 or 7700 XT was actually going to go on sale. Some of these ones really don't go on sale when it comes to graphics card, especially if they have no reason to, right? If the newest version comes out, like for example, in February when the new 50 series comes out, I mean, this is just estimated. That's usually when they come out. That's not me, you know, looking at some type of a leak or anything. So, you know, generally that will make the prices go down, but typically they don't go down on their own unless, you know, people aren't buying 100%. So over here, you know, we have, you know, 4070 ties. I'm not crazy about ties. Okay, here's the thing when we're talking about graphics cards, and this is where I'll leave it. When we're talking about graphics cards, if you are looking to buy anything that is less than a 4070, so 4060, 4060 Ti, 4070, 4070 Super, cut it off. 4070 Ti, 4080, 4080 Ti, or whatever you want to call it, and 4090. If you're talking about anything less than like a 4070 Super, then I'll go ahead and tell you, you can go ahead and buy. If you're talking about more than a 4070 Super, like you're looking at 4K 240 or you're looking at 2K 240, then I would say, I'm not sure why you would, but I would say go ahead and wait till February and see what happens with the prices, then go ahead and buy now. There's really not too much of a point. I would say 4070 Super is probably my cutoff. So just please bear that in mind. New graphics cards will be out in like 3 months, more than likely. So I'll go ahead and because of what I just said here, I'm going to go ahead and skip the 4070 Ti, the 4080s, the 4090s, 7900 XTX. We'll go ahead and skip that as well. It's a great card, you know, but most people who are going after a 7900 XTX already know that they want a 7900 XTX. So we'll kind of keep it in the middle ground. So basically the $400 to $500 price point. So let's see here what we got. So 7800 XT or 4070, they're all going to be around the same price, $489, $489, $20 off. And this is a DoorDash gift card, which is just as good as money. The way people are actually buying these days, it's just as good as just as good as cash. 4060 Tis. I mean, everything's gonna be kind of in that $400 price point. I don't see anything that just jumps out at me that isn't anything crazy. That's crazy. You know, $499, $479. You might get $20 if that. I don't see anything that also even has a great game with it. You know what I mean? This one has Indiana Jones and Great Circle limited offer. Like no one really cares. And not saying that that's a bad game. I haven't played it. I'm just saying like no one cares. It's not like it's like Call of Duty or something. So yeah, you know, 7700 XT, 398, that's actually a pretty good deal. But you know, everything's only going to be like $10 to $20 off. And I'm trying to look through it to see if there's anything crazy. And I don't see anything jumping out at me. Everything is $10 to $20 off. You're really not going to find a whole lot unless you get an open box on the graphics card. So when it comes to graphics cards, I would say don't go for Black Friday. When it comes to graphics cards, I would say skip it and go for open box if you have a store near you that has open box. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get away from this one here. And let's see. Computer cases. I went over computer cases, but a few updates have happened. One, Fractal North is actually on sale. The Fractal North is one of the greatest cases ever. I really like it. I have it like right over here. Fractal North is great. You know, 21% off for a Fractal North is pretty good. The Corsair 4000D Airflow or 4000D Corsair, it's a great case. It's very, very big. I'm not really a big fan of big cases, but I realized I just talked about the Fractal North. But, you know, these cases here are nice full-size ATX cases. If we're looking for micro ATX, because we literally have been talking about micro ATX because they had the better deals, then let me see if they have anything here. Okay. So that's mini IT. Take that back. Mid ATX Sama Black Friday deal for $82.99, high airflow, sturdy. It looks very akin to, let me see, other cases of Yonder. Let me see, what is this? Okay, so this is an ATX mid-tire, so it can take a full-size ATX motherboard. It doesn't give you a whole lot to work with when it comes down to that bottom area, because, you know, you got fans down there, but it is very, very pretty for its price point, especially at $82. So as far as mid-size cases, I would say something along those lines. The Thermaltake Micro ATX, I like this case. Basically, the graphics card sits vertically, and it also has a lot of room for a really big size graphics card. So if you're gonna get something a little bit on the bigger side, 4070 Super Series, then, you know, this guy here may actually fit the bill. And, you know, it's a little tall, don't get me wrong. It's going to be tall and it's a little bulky. Reminds me of like half X's of Yonder years, you know, the big bulky boxes. And so yeah, it's going to be along those lines. So please bear that in mind. But at the same time, it is very, very good. I really like this case, especially at $99. I like it even more. Mini ITX, I'm not going to talk about. Most people don't go Black Friday for Mini ITX. They just buy Mini ITX. And we'll leave it at that. You know, there's a little bit here, but it's not, you know, anything that just jumps out crazy. Like if we're talking about something that's really cheap, this guy here for $54, Sama ARGB black USB 3 tempered glass micro ATX tower for $50. That's not a bad deal. I mean, it's $50. You know, obviously your fans are going to be a little loud because it's $50, but overall, you know, for the price point, it's still not bad. Alrighty, we're gonna go ahead and move on from that. And let's go ahead and go to power supplies. Alrighty, so because we're only talking about anything less than a 4070 Super, because anything more you should wait, we'll stick around the 850 watt or lower price point. So let's see here. 850E fully modular, low noise. And, well, I do like the fully modular power supplies. They are very good. I'm a big fan. But, you know, this is probably gonna beat it. And because I mean, if we're gonna talk about power supplies, you know, okay, well, this is gonna be the best. But plain and simple, that's gonna murder everything here. Yes, it is. Let me make sure. Before I give my final recommendation, I wanna make sure. I love that the PSU I just clicked. I'm gonna talk about here in 1 second here. I just wanna make sure that nothing else beats it. Nope, it's the best. All right, this right here. Cooler Master VA50 SFX Gold. And this is an SFX power supply, gold, very small form factor. Now, you got to make sure that your case can accommodate SFX. Most cases can. But the reason why this guy is so great is because, one, is SFX. So it can fit in smaller cases as well as larger cases, depending on, you know, you just put a plate on it so it can fit in larger cases. But it's 850 watt gold. So it can handle most of your graphics cards 4070 and under. Not most, all, because we're talking about a gold power supply, so it's very, very efficient. Plus it's fully modular. I really, really, really like this power supply. Like, it's really good. Now it does have PCIe 5, so that means that you are going to have the VHPWR, which I'm always gonna mispronounce, but you do have that for the PCIe slot. So anything in the 40 series, like the 4080, 4090, stuff like that, you're already gonna get it the way you want it, which is going to be with that single pin. You don't have to do 87 8-pin cases. Like, you don't have to do like 87 pins. Like, you can just do that one VHPWR case pin and you should be done with it, as it shows there. So that's why I like this guy. It's really, really, really good. Very small form factor, very sturdy. I haven't had any problems with it. And plus, because it is $129 with $30 off, $99.99 for this guy is gonna, there's no point in looking at any other power supply. This is the best power supply, hands down. And this is a SF1000, fully modular, low noise, 80 plus gold as well. But, you know, it's a SFXL. I'm sorry, it's SFXL? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's just a regular SFX. Okay, it just had the L on it. But this is also a really good power supply. Now, of course, this guy is 119, whereas the other one is 99, and this is 800, or this is 1,000 watt, which is fine for it to be 1,000 watt, because I mean, 1,000 watt allows you to use it for 4090s and things of that nature. But, you know, it's kind of up to you. I don't really see a point of you going 1,000 watt. You know, 8050 gold is pretty much enough for most situations, unless, you know, the new graphics cards turn into absolute tanks. But I would say 1,000, maybe. This would probably be like my runner up. This will be number one. This will be number two. Power supplies, that was really easy. Alrighty, let's go ahead and go to cooling. Why not? Alrighty, so we did see a little bit of cooling here, but a lot of it is going to be personal preference. Some people like bigger, some people like smaller, some people like liquid cooling. I'll go liquid cooling because we've been talking about Ryzen, but it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Like for example, the Hyper 212 Evo, well, it used to be called Evo. I'm not sure what it's called now, but the Hyper 212, I mean, it's probably in most cases okay, but it's not going to be the greatest thing in the world, but it'll probably get the job done because we've been talking about mid-grade processors this entire time. So, you know, but I would say Be Quiet Dark Rock 5 would probably be my sweet spot if we're talking about coolers, like actual AC cooler, not AC coolers, but heatsink coolers. And well, okay, the other ones have heatsinks too, but open air coolers, that's the word I was looking for, versus liquid coolers. So if we're talking open air, I always like the Dark Rock Be Quiet because those are just really nice and really quiet. If we're talking about like a liquid cooler, I would say the H100i. I really never go any higher than like a H100i or H115i. I rarely ever go for the 3/, the 150i's. I don't really see a point. In most situations, you know, this is okay. You can go for something like this, but I would rather go 2 140 millimeter fans than 3, what is this? 360 millimeter fans. My mind just went blank. I'm sorry. I would rather go 2 128 or 2 140, so 280 millimeter than 360. That's just my personal preference. Once it gets to 360, it's just too long for me and it becomes a very, very big case. So I would say H100i if we're talking liquid cooling, and the Be Quiet if we're talking about air cooling. Some of these other ones are okay, like any of these Hyper 212s have been okay, but if you can get a Be Quiet, I would go for a Be Quiet. Or if you can get a Noctua, I'll go for a Noctua. And those are just my personal preferences. That's not any reason behind it. They're just cooler and quieter. Let me see if I covered everything here. Yes, I think so. Power supply. I think SSDs we kind of already covered. There wasn't a whole lot to talk about it, but I will click on them just because. So, you know, 1 terabyte if you're, you know, a glutton for punishment. 2 terabytes if you want to stay safe. So if you want to do gaming and you want to have a lot of games on it, then I would say 2 terabyte minimum. I'm tired of saying 1 terabyte. I've been saying 1 terabyte for years, so I'm kind of done with 1 terabyte at this point. It's just not enough storage. The games are too big. I would say 2 terabyte minimum, or 2 terabytes if you can get that. That'd be great. But you know, the Western Digital Black has been on sale everywhere. It's not a Newegg thing. It's everywhere thing, and it's always a pretty good deal at 124. You know, you can get some a little bit cheaper if you like go to like Newegg and you know, get some of the cheaper ones, but the Western Digital Black is more reliable. So I'll go with that. Obviously 990 Pros are really good, but they're always going to be more expensive. There's no way around that. They're just the Samsung chip, the memory chip, that you use for the actual NVMe drives are just better. So that's the reason why it's just always a good deal. But there's not a whole lot more to say about NVMe's, you know. You're going to be in that $120 price range if we're talking about 2 terabyte, and you're going to be in the $240 price range if we're talking about 4.